Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Practical Poker Profits Pod. My name's Louie, and glad to have you guys back for today. For today, I wanted to talk about starting hand ranges. This is our pre-flop selection. Of cards and thinking about ranges as well. Besides the actual specific cards. So before you get into a pot or before you start, battling it out with someone, a big chunk of what you're doing is deciding whether you even want to play this hand or not, because it'll be your choice when the whole action comes around you, with the other players. And then so it'll be, a time for you to decide whether you want to call, or limp in, which, we don't recommend, or if you want to raise, or if you want to three bet, which is, do a re-raise if somebody raised or something, or if you just want to muck your cards and fold and throw them away. Right. So a lot of times, people will get into like a little bit of trouble because they might be too loose with their pre-flop hand selection with what they decide to play beforehand. And then some other people on the other end of the spectrum, maybe they're very tight and maybe they are just looking and waiting for just the elite premium of the premium hands to play. And then different things happen with them as well, especially if there's players around them that are somewhat observant and stuff like that. They'll go through different things. So a lot of your session is going to be depicted about how you go about with your plan in your pre-flop selection of the hands you're going to play. You know, so yeah, I'm going to show us a little chart here. So all right, let's see. Cool. All right. So here we have Texas Hold'em starting hands. And I picked this one because not only do you see specific hands, like pocket aces and pocket twos, so for you guys that are brand new to these kind of charts, you'll see pocket aces on the very top left in the light blue, right? Ace, ace, that's a pair of aces. If you go all the way down to the bottom yellow, for example, that you see a 2-2, that means a pair of twos, right? And so I kind of like this chart because it's a way of seeing the actual hands that you're going to be, you know, thinking about playing, and also it has the color coding for the range that it kind of falls under for the most part. So in the last episode, one of the things that we had talked about was the positioning of the table. And so I remember we did, like, it had its own color coding. Like I remember, I think green was like the button and so on, But for here it's nice and easy, and it's broken down where the blue is any position. So especially from the under the gun, where you have to be the tightest in a sense, or the most frugal. Um, so in this blue you could play anyone in a sense, including the under the gun, which is the very first person to act, right? And then there's under the gun one and under the gun two, so those are considered the early positions, those first three guys that have to act once it's time for action, right? In terms of the seeing if people want to bet or check or whatnot. And so the green is the middle to late position here. And then so those are the middling positions. The late position would be kind of like the cutoff, the button, and you can throw in the hijack too. And so those are the ending positions. And then in the red is the unplayable, which is like the trash, where from any position you just don't want nothing to do with it. So um obviously, when you see in the blue of what to play in any position, you have, the best of the best hands in a sense. The best hand that you can have, starting hand in No Limit Hold'em, is pocket aces, pocket rockets, right? And so everybody, once they see this one, they get super excited on the inside because you know that you can get paid pretty big, right? There's a good chance for that. And so there's aces here. And then there's pocket kings, queens, jacks, tens, nines, all the way to sevens. So here in this chart, they recommend from pocket sevens and up, you can basically play from damn near anywhere in the position, even in the beginning where you're most vulnerable in a sense. And there's, of course, ace king, which is a very popular one where people like to just start pre-flop in terms of the pre-flop betting. They like to make big bets and stuff like that, or even go all in sometimes. You'll see that. And there's ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, which are pretty good aces, right? Aces with good kickers. The kicker means the other card that is partnered along with the ace. So if you have an ace queen, the queen is the kicker. That's a good kicker, a high kicker. An ace jack is a good kicker. Ace 10 is pretty good. And so especially if you're in a pot with someone and maybe both of you guys have aces, the person with the higher ace with the better higher kicker will be the one to win. You can also throw in king jack here. That gets honorable mention. uh King jack, king queen, king 10. Queen Jack is also pretty good. Queen 10 is pretty good. They flop pretty good. Jack 10, Jack 9, 10 9. So those are hands that you can make some nice straights with, or if the board favors when the dealer puts out the flop and the board is in that middling range, that 8, 9, 10 range, that will pretty much favor those cards right there towards the end of this blue spectrum. All right. So after that, we have middle to late position. All right. So here is where the beginning of like the middle pocket pairs will make their appearance. I mean, some people will throw in sevens and eights. I might as well. But here in this chart, they have sixes and fives, which is pretty reasonable, pretty fine. And then you have the middling aces in a sense. So ace nine, ace eight, ace seven, ace six. I don't play these ones as much. For a couple of reasons. If anything, I'd prefer to play the low aces, like the ace five, ace four suited. Because you have the chance for making cool little straights and or flushes with that. Um, I noticed that it's harder to obviously get a straight when you have like say like ace seven, right? It doesn't really work too well for that. But they are aces and they're decent, so that's why they have here that you could play that in a middle to late position. And then also obviously always depending on how the other players are. If it's a looser table, then I'm perfectly okay with playing this in this position. If it's a tight table, then I would really have to think about it, like and maybe not even do it. So you got king nine, queen eight, jack eight, all the way 10 8 9 8, and so these are pretty decent good hands. They flop pretty okay as well. And so and then yeah so and it'll also hit the range of the person really well if they're playing those lower green section hands. If it's a middling range that comes out on the flop, it'll obviously hit them pretty well. All right. So in yellow, it's in late position only. So this is after people have been folding in front of you, and then it's just maybe a couple of you guys left towards the ladder of this round here and seeing who wants to be in the hand in the pot. And so here they have the baby pairs, the baby pocket pairs, which they have 4 through 2. The fours, the threes, the twos. Those are the baby pocket pairs. And then you have the low aces, the ace five all the way to ace two. And like I just said a minute ago, if they're suited as well, I think they're pretty cool. I think they end up paying out pretty well if they do hit on the flop. And they have the kings, the I guess like the middling kings, the king eights, sevens, all the way to twos. That's interesting, I guess. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to be as good as the ace high, but a king is not too shabby. I've seen some people go crazy with these kind of hands, and they'll just go all in with them, and that doesn't usually tend to work out too well. But anyway, but like we said, this is for late position. So for late position, if people haven't made it too expensive, then maybe you can kind of start like a, kind of go in there for a price that's not too crazy, and then kind of take it from there, especially if it's suited. I mean, having a king, say king two of diamonds, that's pretty decent in a sense of, if diamonds come out, because you'll have the second nut flush, meaning the second highest version of a flush that you could have, in a sense. So um you also have Jack 7, 10 7, and then you have the 9 7, 8 sevens, 7 6, 6 5, 5 4. These kind of middling ones. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too much of a fan. I play these in certain times, certain tables. This is kind of a not all the time. So those, the tail end of those yellow ones, it's kind of more like you can kind of afford to be pickier with those. If they're suited, okay, we have a little bit more leeway, but you don't want to be just, you don't want to go ham or get too happy, when you have those cards, even in late position. You kind of want to maybe think a little bit about it. All right. The unplayable hands, are in red. Okay. So we don't really want to touch these in general, especially in the lower stakes, in entry level cash games. You don't necessarily have to be bluffing your ass off. It's okay to throw in some bluffs, but you're better off, not basing your game off being a bluffing maniac, or just that you really want to get off on doing that. So in these hands, these unplayable, crappy trash hands, you got queen 7, queen 6, all the way down to twos, jack 6 down to jack 2, uh 10 6 down to 10 2. It's like with these hands, it's like, man, you really are playing bingo. You would have to get really lucky on the flop, and obviously sometimes these cards will come out, like imagine if there's 10 6, and then you get a couple of sixes that come out on the board. Yes, that happens. It does happen, but playing these hands in the long run are gonna end up, taking away money from you. And so you don't really want to be going in with these things. It's, yeah, even if under weird bluffy circumstances, you're probably better off than not doing it, especially if you're just getting your feet wet in the poker rooms and you want to establish yourself as not being a loser, because before you're a winner, you have to not be a loser, right? And so especially in this game, because things are very close, the equity values of percentages are really close, and they go up and down like a roller coaster within ourselves, like within the players, as the games are going on and the pots are going on. And since things are really close like that, there's no reason to kind of be extra risky and stuff like that, especially the beginning, where you're kind of just trying to get a foothold on this, and you're just trying to get familiar with feeling consistent and solid. You just kind of want to avoid these things. They have a crappy 9 5, 9 3, 8 4, 8 2. It's like you never want to play this unless you're like in the mood to play bingo, basically. Like I said, 6 4, 6 2, 4 3, 3 2. You'll see some people getting tricky with it. You will see this, but and they can pay off big in a sense, I guess. But more times than not is just better, especially right now. You'll end up making more money in the long run by avoiding these fancy situations, like where you try to just kind of give yourself like a version of like fancy play syndrome, where you think you saw somebody on TV do this, and I want to be fancy and do this tricky thing with his crappy hand and just take it to this guy and stick it to him and show him who's boss. And like I said, it can happen, but basing your game off of that is something that you don't want to be having your foundation in. So yeah, and so I wanted to share that with you guys, and hopefully you guys kind of got a good understanding of kind of how to go about that structure. And uh, a thing to keep in mind is that when you are in the earlier positions, like the under the gun 1 and 2, those first couple of positions, you want to be, it's almost like you want to imagine like your hands, like the hands that you get, that you see, that they shrink up. that you're more vulnerable. Like imagine, since you're early on in that, in that rotation, the people after you, it's like imagine you have to walk through an alley, and then there's a lot of people that you have to walk through or get through in a sense. So, especially if you try to get fancy with those crappy red, hands in the red, especially if you try to do that in the under the gun spots, holy shit, does that, it'll usually bite you in the ass, especially with competent players. And I'm noticing that players are getting more competent. It's not like the early 2000s where people were just getting away with so much stuff because the players were just pretty much throwing away money like it's just going out of style. And it's not really like that too much anymore. There's more competency, and people are doing their version of learning and studying. And so trying to do those things in the early under the gun positionings will be like shooting yourself in the foot. It'll be like walking through a dark alley, in a bad neighborhood, and you just know it's risky and it's not worth the risk, right? um, and then as you go on in the rotation towards the button, and then how we said in the earlier show that the button is the one that gets to act last. So the more you get in the rotation in terms of the positioning to where you get to act last, the more looser in a sense you could feel, or the more opening, like the more open your hand range will be in a sense of hands that you could play, especially if people were mucking and folding their cards right all before you and there's just a couple of you guys left. Then your hand range has definitely opened up, and it's definitely okay to play some cool middling cards or something like that. Some suited connectors or some suited gappers. A suited connector would be like 7-8 of clubs, right? Because they're connected 7 and 8 to each other, and then they're suited, right? So a suited connector. A suited gapper is where they have a gap, so maybe like 7-9 of clubs. And so you want to keep that in mind, that things shrink up as you get into the earlier position, and they loosen up, and you're able to be a tiny bit more splashy as you get towards the later positions by the button, the cut off, the hijack. So yeah, that's a little bit of that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You can email me at uncannymysticminds@gmail. That's where I have my other original podcast, and it'd be cool to talk to some other poker players to kind of, just shoot this shit, and then we could just kind of just pick each other's brains and learn and talk about poker and talk about hands and kind of see where this stuff goes. And yeah, the IG is the same thing, Uncanny Mystic Minds. And even the YouTube is the same at Uncanny Mystic Minds. And I'll start putting this stuff on YouTube as well. Right now, it's just officially on like Spotify and the other podcasting platforms. So yeah, that's what's up. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll be seeing you guys later. All right, good luck.